Welcome to Flow with Arman Assadi. Welcome, my beautiful people. I have something very different for you today. Different is good. I'm trying to keep you on your toes. So what I've got for you today is actually, I was recently a guest on another podcast. The podcast is called Intentional Growth, hosted by my friend and fellow YEC member, Ryan Tansom. And we had such an amazing and valuable conversation. And also, it was super fun to be in the guest seat and turn the tables a little bit. But we had such an amazing, valuable conversation that I asked Ryan if he would be okay with me publishing a segment of that interview, of that discussion on the show. And the reason I wanted that is because I really wanted to make sure that you heard this information, because we had a really important discussion about the most important foundational aspect of finding fulfillment in your work, which is setting yourself up properly from day one for flow. And we go through a very strategic set of principles that I've built, created, followed, and implemented in my life and continue to use to measure and understand and become more self-aware. And we also talk about self-awareness. So the conversation was an hour long, but I grabbed a 30-minute portion of that conversation, and I'm going to be sharing that with you here today. And if you enjoy it, make sure you go check out the full episode and definitely check out Ryan's podcast. It's absolutely fantastic, in particular for entrepreneurs and business owners. He can save you years of time and turmoil, because the way in which we connected was, obviously we're both flow junkies, as you'll see, but around this concept of intentional growth, which is what he's all about. You don't want to build a business that you become enslaved to. And so many of the people that Ryan works with are in that position where they build a company and become an entrepreneur for freedom, but then it becomes like a noose around their neck and they just can't wait to get out. But Ryan proposes that your business has so much value in it. And because of that desire to just get out, you end up leaving so much money on the table. So with that said, let's dive into that conversation. Now, one quick note before we dive in. I recently compiled a flow kit. This is my absolute greatest hits of every tool, health supplement, online business resources, my favorite books, everything that I absolutely love. And I compiled it all together into a flow kit. If you want access to that, shoot me a text message and let me know that you want it. Shoot me a text at 619-825-2595. And also, we're talking a lot about flow, obviously, in this conversation. If you don't already know your brain type, this is a short quiz that takes about 3 minutes that you can take right now on your phone as you're listening along. Shoot me a text with hashtag BTA, and I will send you a link to the brain type assessment. Without further ado, my conversation, turning the tables with Ryan Tansom.
I want to explain my thoughts on this, and I want to hear your feedback on it, because I believe, given the context that you just set perfectly, is that as a business owner, the reason that there's like people have problems with exiting and they're so miserable afterwards, or they want to get out because they're no longer in it, is that a business as a mechanism or an organism can help create this world of flow almost better than anything else out in life, besides maybe a sports situation for an athlete.
Right.
Because
especially if you're an entrepreneur. Yeah.
And I think the reason, and there's a lot of other creative ways that artists could be, but I'm thinking about specifically for entrepreneurs, because you have challenges. So if it's 2% more, you're always, as an entrepreneur, you can kind of wake up and do what you want every day, right? So you end up going into places that create this feeling, right? So you're going into places that you like, and that you can grow incrementally. You tend to avoid shit you don't like, which is a big problem when you're trying to build a machine that's worth a lot of money. But you know, if you're neglecting things or not hiring away those things, so you're growing in areas that provide a little bit of challenge. the feedback mechanisms are insane. Like the dopamine that you get from the balance sheet, winning customers, winning the revenue, getting the sale, opening up products or locations or whatever it is, you're just constantly getting feedback on how well you're doing.
Big time.
And it becomes this derivative of your identity. Like everything around you is like this result of who you are. And so like when I think about like the people that I've interviewed that have netted insane amounts of money and are upset, it's because they literally like fired half their life or their identity. If they haven't articulated and become intentional about what creates that feeling, it's almost like an addict that doesn't know they're an addict, and then they're all of a sudden they're going through withdrawal and you can't go back. You know, an addict can actually pick up the bottle or pick up the drug or whatever it is, but once you sell your company, you can't unless you recreate this situation outside of it. And I truly believe that this topic is one of the most important unspoken about issues, why the boomer generation or a lot of entrepreneurs will not even talk about how to grow a business that's sellable, because it's like telling you that you're going to sell your identity. Even though building a valuable business is one of the most freeing things you could do to create more flow and not have to sell your business. So like I said a lot there, but I don't know what your thoughts are about being an entrepreneur and creating this situation and avoiding or identifying how to avoid the new situation.
No, man, I'm really glad you're bringing it up, and I definitely have a personal experience here in it. And I will say this to start: it's like it is a challenge worth tackling and making an everyday focus to be intentional with this exact thing that you just described. But my point is, it's a challenge. It's really hard because it's so easy to get lost in your business. So do I agree that a business is the ultimate medium for experiencing flow on a daily basis? Fuck yes, absolutely. It really is. The high, there's nothing like it. You can lose yourself and you can set this business up to literally feel like the exact environment that allows you to do all of the things that only you do best, where it's timeless. So you're waking up every day and it's just like, you don't care if you put in 14, 15 hours. And these are, by the way, the people that seem to have a sense of unlimited energy. And this is maybe making it a little bit overly simplified, but one awesome measure is just, is this energy producing or not? Is this taking energy or giving energy? When you find yourself in an activity where you can seemingly do it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end, there's something happening there. I was listening just last night to something that blew my mind. I'll share an example. I was listening to Hugh Jackman talk to Tim Ferriss. And I've always been fascinated by that dude. So I listened, and he got really emotional talking about telling his kids, don't settle. Find that thing that truly puts you into a state where you feel like this is the one thing that you were brought here on earth to do. Now, you know, he puts a religious spin on things. Some people are religious, some people aren't. It doesn't matter. We all have to have a form of meaning in our lives. And a business is a beautiful way to exercise that meaning. And if you can set it up in a way where the activities that you're performing on a daily basis bring out the best in you and are super meaningful and make an impact on others, and you just feel absolutely high, I don't think there's anything better than that. Now, here's where the challenge comes in. I think that the benefits are very clear. Here's the challenge. Business is very challenging. The needs and pressures are constantly fluctuating. One of the hardest experiences of my life was building my company, Project Evo, from the ground up. Everything from a Kickstarter launch to setting up e-commerce and just stepping into an arena that I'd never been in before. I built an app, set up subscription, tried to figure out SaaS, a lot of different things. And it was super, super challenging, but very enjoyable. Now, here's where things went wrong. And here's my cautionary tale for people. And to answer that question of how do we address it so that we don't wake up one day and go, how the fuck did I get here? Get me out. Okay.
Yes.
And again, it's hard. So if you're getting into flow, you have to be able to measure something like this. Without some form of accountability and measurement, and again, you could do this just through a really simple process of self-awareness, like by journaling. When you wake up in the morning, I do something called morning pages I learned from Julia Cameron in a book called The Artist's Way. It's all about creativity. Not really business related, but it kind of is, because a lot of business, I think business is creative. It's a creative enterprise. So I do morning journaling. That self-awareness moment, like, what am I looking forward to? What am I not looking forward to? What is starting to consume me? That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is like straight up, quantitative data. Like, some people are nerds about this stuff. They sit down and they look at their business and they look at their life categories and they go, well, let me see if I'm aligned. And there are tools for this. I swear to God, you can probably Google right now, am I aligned? Am I living my purpose? And you'll find some like free
3 million hits. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll find some free PDF that you can fill out every day to score yourself to create that self-awareness. It's the same thing. All of it is there to just provide a level of self-awareness. Am I on the right track? Because here's the thing about flow. What it's all about is supreme presence. In order to create that presence, you have to be doing an activity that gets you into flow, right? But there's another aspect to it. It's not just about the present. It's also about the aim. It's about the future. When our life has meaning, we feel like we're moving towards something that is meaningful and has a purpose toward it. And that North Star can change. It can move. It's okay for it to move. But as long as you're staying true to it and you're in the driver's seat, then you can continue to experience flow every single day. The moment that you find yourself in the passenger seat and the problems of the business are outweighing your individual desires or your individual requirements to stay in flow, you start losing and you'll start to feel miserable and you'll start to feel like, but I have to. And then you become trapped. So what happened to me is I became trapped in a role called Chief Executive Officer, which meant do everything. And if you can hire a person to do it, great. If you can't, whatever. And then here's where flow is personalized, and we need to understand ourselves and why assessments and personality type is so important. You have to understand who you are. If you understand who you are, you can watch out for the the areas where you might be susceptible. So like one area that I'm susceptible, and I know this because of my assessment, the Evo Elements assessment, that I'm a relational architect. And as an architect brain type, I'm always going to be the one that takes responsibility for things. I'm very dependable. I work the hardest in the room, and I'm probably going to be the workaholic in the room. But guess what? Everything that everyone else doesn't do is going to fall onto my lap, and my pile of stuff keeps getting bigger. And that's my job to set proper fucking boundaries. But because I don't know how, and I have this brain type that I've developed a character, I've developed a personality. It started at a young age. That's me. By being aware of it, I can set proper boundaries. But when you're not aware of these things and who you are, all of a sudden you find yourself trapped. But then you also have the opposite side of that coin. Well, what are my strengths? What are my superpowers? And what should I be spending my time doing? So all of these things in combination, by the way, that's why I created an assessment, so that I could understand how to get into flow, who I am, and watch out for the areas of my life that I know I'm going to be challenged.
Well, I was going to say, this is so gold, and so much gold, because like when I think about the crazy dynamics of how people truly experience these problems, is like, to build a valuable business, you have to be aware of all of these things, and you have to actually go into places that don't create your flow, right? So as an artist, you have to go into places that are not enjoyable. Salespeople that are, the sales entrepreneur have to get into finance and ops. Someone that's an engineer has to get into sales, and like there's all these different areas of like how to build this. And I think what you said was really interesting, is because the moment you wake up, like here's what I'm seeing if you might do a better way of articulating this, Arman, is that you're on this high and you're doing this to the point where you wake up and that noose happens like this, right? So when that happens, it's because the business is suffering in all these other areas, that the cash and the actual financial stability and health of the business becomes a problem, or it's not sellable or transferable because you focus on so much of this other thing. So that awareness of I want the F out now, but then mechanically it's too late. And however, to find someone that is in flow and essentially the addict or the flow junkie, and say, hey, by the way, you need to be self-aware and you need to work on things that are not as enjoyable to create a more valuable company so that you can actually go back and always be in flow and never have the risk of losing it. Does that make sense? It's like that right there has been my 6-year marketing problem because it's impossible to get through because people are like, I'm loving this, dude. I'm just loving this. I'm growing. And then they wake up and they're like, I want out. And I'm like, well, you sacrificed all these things for 10 years and because you only lived in the places you loved. And then you woke up and you said, I want out. But then the house only has awesome countertops and it's got mold in the ceiling.
Yeah. So then this is where you are the expert, man. It's like, this is where I'm learning. It's like, so are you saying that in some sense, we have to put a percentage of our efforts on things that we need to build some sort of core competency in, or we just need to make sure they're properly set up so that we build a thriving business so that we can then take back our time in the future? And I guess my question and thought about this is, and what I've gone through is, how do you prevent yourself from getting stuck in those things that you didn't sign up for? That's the challenge that I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through. It's like, if you tell me like I need to do that stuff, sure, I'll do it. But in my experience, what happened was, let's say I wanted to spend 80% of my time, ideally, like that's an aim, doing things that I uniquely do best. And like that should be something every person in the company, like everyone should be doing the thing that they uniquely do best, at least as much as they possibly can. But then all of a sudden it was flipped. It was like 90% shit that I didn't want to do or shouldn't be doing. And then trying to have the self-awareness to go back toward, I need to be spending my time here. And it's always in the back of the mind. It's like, this is where I should be spending my time. This is where I should be spending my time, trying to optimize for that. But it's easy to get lost.
Yeah, man. I think, and this is where it's funny because like I want to make sure I continue to go back to that thought is I love like the things that we're talking about more than, and this is where my whole life has. And then I learned the mechanics so that I could stay here. Right. And what I found is that, so when I say, I give that little foundational point, because I'm going to go into a little bit of a technical nature, which I never was I was never technical or financial in nature. I just found I had to, so I could continue to talk about kind of things, is that you say, okay, well, that's fine. If you if you enjoy one part of the business, because there are engineers who will literally engineer their way into the red because they don't know how to sell. And I've seen $10 million businesses that do that, right? They just continue developing new products and they don't know how to sell, and then they go out of business. Or a salesperson who knows how to sell. They don't have any good financials. They have no good operations or anything like that. And they sell themselves into the red as well. And so like, I think in order to like truly create the freedom to be who you want to be in flow in the day-to-day role, which again is the difference between ownership and management. If your role, if you want to be the relationship architect and the big partnership strategic person, there's a payroll that's associated with that. You need to hire out the other things. And what I've seen too many people get into the problem of is the owner grows this business and they're solving for annual income. So they're solving for this year's distributions, and they're going, no effing way I'm going to hire this person because I want my boat or cabin or car, instead of saying, hey, I'm good with my $125,000 salary or whatever they're giving themselves. I'm going to reinvest those distributions to get that out because I'm growing a more valuable business. And it's that, like you and I talked about yesterday, of like having the short and the long term kind of in balance. And it's just, I guess the point is like, so much of it is immediate gratification because of flow. And you say, like you just said it, like, I'm asking you to sacrifice certain things, whether it's money to hire those things out and keep your boundaries and awareness of that. So that way you can actually continue to live in that once the company thrives. So many people go straight to the flow and straight to the money, and then it's just like, and they're just done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the moment they realize, they're like, hey, I'm spending 90% of my time on shit I hate. It's like, well, you can't transfer whatever this mess is that you've created. I mean, yeah, you've got a solid salary and distributions, but like, who else wants that
chaos? Yeah. And there's, just basic foundational things like learning that a lot of people, I think, get this wrong, where they talk about working on the business, not in it. That's just a classic thing that we hear in the business and entrepreneurship world, right? It's like being the owner, working on the business, not being in the weeds as much as possible, playing in your area of strength. But I think one thing that I embraced, and I don't regret at all, was, well, that's not an overnight thing. Like if you want to achieve and get to the point where you can work on the business and be a little bit more high level on the macro scale, you have to go in the business hard. Like, and I embraced the hell out of that. Like I went deep into everything. I mean, customer service, tech and development, e-commerce, Amazon, fulfillment, sourcing, manufacturing, developing a core competency in everything. And everyone's different. Some people don't want to get their hands dirty and they're like, no, I'll just hire for that. Maybe this is like a thing of just wanting to have all stars as well. I don't like hiring someone who I'm not absolutely sure knows way more than me and is at the top of their game. So one of the things I love to do is go into something, learn it, knowing that I can learn it faster than most people, and then come in and try to hire someone for that role. Like, all right, you're going to be our Amazon account manager. And then getting on a couple interviews and seeing if they really know their shit after me having spent a month or two in it. That makes me feel good and secure about building a stable company, that each person we're bringing in is like an absolute all-star and A player. Because another mistake I made in the beginning was we were growing fast and it was moving fast. And we were like, whoa, my God, we need help. So I just went to my network, was like, oh, I had this guy that was interning for me. I had this other guy that, reached out, was like, I'd love to help you. And, I take a job or whatever. I was like, okay, great. We need all the help we can get. But then those people get locked in and they're part of the vision now. And all of a sudden you find that they're creating bottlenecks and they're making mistakes. I mean, some of the mistakes that we had happen in our company were like $50,000, $100,000 mistakes in the first year. That was like, like I was losing my mind. I mean, literally in one day, mislabeling of a product coming from China that cost us, $75,000 to relabel, resticker when it arrived to US or something like that. And another one was like an international shipping mistake or whatever for our e-commerce product. But these were all due to the result of not having hired A players. Then what happened with me is I went, oh shit, hired the wrong people. I've got to go in and clean up this mess and take over these roles. So then all of a sudden I found myself in way too many roles again, taking on too many things with that thing in the back of my mind of like, well, what do I really do best? What really gets me into flow? I have that in my sights and I'm going to make sure I work toward that again. So I'm going to make sure I'm constantly self-aware that every single day, at least 1%, I'm moving from 90% or 80% being things I don't enjoy back to the 80% where it's my superpower. And that's it. That's the self-awareness. So I think in order to prevent that day where we wake up, if we're recognizing that we're moving in the wrong direction, then we need to self-correct. The moment we sense it,
You nailed it. So there's a couple things there that I'm curious on actionable ways of like how you live this because you created a business around being self-aware. Right? And we're on here because we're both like flow junkies and the psychology junkies of this. For someone that's listening, hopefully they're going, okay, I'm starting to get it, or I'm curious. How do you become self-aware? Right? Like what are the ways? I mean, I know you got the PDF, the example you also, it was like great. It was like, yeah, if you Google this, there's ways, but like, when you think about someone that's just starting on this concept and saying, okay, like I do probably find myself only playing in the places that I like the things that I'm probably good at and the things that I enjoy. How do you start to become aware of it? And then, so what's the process of becoming aware? And then also, Arman, is like, how do you as an individual and an entrepreneur make sure that you're setting yourself to engineer this landscape where you can constantly have that, whether you have the business or not? And I think recreating that scenario of all these examples without a business is tenfold more complicated because you don't have this sandbox to do this in.
Right. Okay. So I love the self-awareness question. I think that I think that it's honestly one of the most important things in life. I mean, no joke. I mean, it goes back thousands of years. The unexamined life is not worth living, if that was actually something that Aristotle said. So here's the deal. There are some, I think, basic pragmatic ways that a person can become self-aware. And the purpose of it, just so that we have like a why behind it, is that a life where we are aware of our strengths and our weaknesses is a life where we can adapt ourselves to the environment in a way that sets us up to just feel better. Like, this is about feeling good. This is about fulfillment and the elusive happiness, even, which I think is the most important thing to be optimizing for. Like, that's it. Like, yes, the business is cool. Yes, the money's cool. Yes, flow is even cool. But like, what are we really after? Feeling good. Like, let's really get it simple. So if you have higher emotional intelligence and higher self-awareness, and you know who you are and you know how to spend your time so that you can feel good, you're going to feel better. So that's important to start with. The first thing, I wrote this down a long time ago. I just pulled this up. It was like, when I was really starting my process of self-awareness, there were three questions I asked myself. First, I asked myself, but then actually what I recommend is you go to, it's a simple exercise. Pick like 5 people, maybe 7 even, as many as you like that are close to you, that are people whose opinions that you respect, but of varying degrees of closeness. So one might be like your brother who's really close to you, and another level might be your coworker, and another level might be like a friend of a friend that you've interacted with a few times, but comfortable enough to have a safe conversation with. And you're going to go to them and you're going to say something, and this is going to feel awkward for a lot of people, but you're going to say, hey, look, you might just be in conversation, of course, like do that in a way that makes sense, but you want to ask them 3 questions, and you want to tell them that you want to preface that their answer is not going to offend you, especially in the date that we're recording this, 2020, where everyone is fucking offended by everything. You want to be really clear that you want this information for your benefit and that it's not going to offend you. Okay. It's ridiculous that we have to preface these things, but it is what it is. But the reason is you want their honest answer. So question number 1 is, what is something I do better than most people? That's it. You want to start to see a pattern. This is all about pattern recognition. What is the pattern? Like, if you can start to identify a superpower in your life, man, that's power. So you're looking for the thing that if you were to double down on and invest, you could become superhuman at. And you're looking for the thing that you uniquely do best, meaning you might be a great CEO, but like a lot of people could do that. Maybe you do need to hire someone to come in and do that. And what you uniquely do best is speaking on stage.
Such a good, it is, because I think what, just to take a pause on this situation or this topic, is like, you said that you're the job as CEO, and I think there's a lot of preconceived notions of what that job of CEO is, right? Like, and that's different. What you just identified then is being a speaker, or someone that's an inventor, or someone that's like unique. I like how you said relationship architect earlier. Like, each of those things are different than managing a P&L and making sure things are driving forward for the bottom line, right? I mean, that's
big time.
Those are different than just the role of a CEO.
Big time. It's like, I don't know, like Elon Musk isn't trying to be a charismatic leader. He's not a Jack Welch.
Sure?
He's not. I mean, he mumbles himself across stage, and he's not the most charismatic speaker. But what he is an absolutely brilliant engineer. So he knows where to spend his time. He knows that he can create world-class products and work with brilliant people and attract great people. And he's good enough at speaking that he knows how to create curiosity in the marketplace about what's coming and play the game really well so that people get excited about what he's building. So again, it's like, it takes time to master this. But there's a question also that's related to this question that is a driving force in my life that I'll share. It's a question by Alan Watts, who's a famous philosopher.
Is this question number 2, or is this?
No, this is just a sidebar on question number 1 is, what would I do if money were no object? Oftentimes what you would do if money were no object is related to the thing that you uniquely do best, that is your superpower. So it's a question definitely worth mulling over. Question number 2 is, what is a habit that I may not be aware of? this is where it gets like, oh, I'm happy telling you what you do best, but like, are you sure you want me to tell you that you bite your nails, that you speak over people, that you don't listen well, that you are too soft, that you don't have good boundaries? Like, I want to know. Do you want to know? I want to know. I want to know what people see. Because look, it's like hiring a coach. It's that simple. And if you ask 7 people this question,
oh boy,
you can find some good stuff. I mean, you said, how can I become self-aware?
I'm sure you could find more than 5 to 7 that would answer that second question.
Yeah. And if you create a safe environment for them to answer it where you're not going to be offended, it's awesome. So it can be positive. It doesn't have to be negative. You're not basically telling them it's a bad habit. You just want to see, are you aware of it? And chances are you're very aware of it. Most of the time we know ourselves better than anybody else does, right? We know our habits, but it helps to hear somebody else say it. And, we can then decide, is this useful or not? And what it does is it's also a, push on the self-awareness meter. It's like, okay, there I go.
To be able to be aware that you're doing it.
Yeah. And then finally, question number 3 is, how would you describe me to a friend of yours? The reason I like to ask that question is because it's a nice pat on the back sometimes. Sometimes we just don't see ourselves accurately. We often don't. You might have come across like viral videos and things like that, or, where you see people like, I don't know, I saw one Jay Shetty did one time or something. It was like people just hating on themselves and just being so negative. And then he's sitting and talking to the sister. What do you think about your sister or the friend? And it's like they think they're the most unbelievable person. They're so beautiful, so smart, so this, so that. We just don't see ourselves accurately. It's important to, especially entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, you're probably really self-critical. And so it's important to have a proper sense of identity. And it's a really huge cognitive hack, actually, because you might have heard about like kind of loose things like, you want to have like a vision of yourself and you want to manifest things. I'm not big on that stuff. What I'm big on is like identity, because when we have a clear version of our identity, we will meet it. We will show up to be that person. But if our identity is that like I'm just average, or I'm not good looking, or I'm not very smart, or I'm not very good at making deals, like that's just the way we're going to show up. Those are just 3 very basic questions. The other thing I would do is I have a free quiz, like I have to mention, it's just so valuable. The brain type assessment. Brain type assessment's been taken by close to 1 million people. It'll give you your brain type. This is all around self-awareness and how you uniquely think and how you see the world. That's what it's going to show you. And we just gave that away. And there happens to be a planner, like I mentioned, the e-commerce business that I run, that supplements it. But all you really need to start is this awareness of your brain type. There's 4 brain types: the alchemist, the oracle, the architect, and the explorer. And knowing that and understanding, is my core nature internal or external? Am I abstract or concrete? How do I engage with people? What are my weaknesses? It just gives you all this self-awareness. So super, super powerful. It's helped a lot of people. And just Google brain type assessment. There it is, friendos. There it is. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want the rest of it, go check out the full episode. Support Ryan's show, and don't forget to support. I am not removing that. I love the real shit. Don't forget to support the show. Oh God, that was good. Make sure you're subscribed, guys, on Apple Podcast and Spotify, wherever you're listening, and leave me a review. I'm going to keep saying it until I see a review from you. I'm literally going to keep saying. In fact, if you haven't left a review yet, I need you to go do it right now. And if you have, can you just shoot me a text so that I know, so that I can thank you properly? I would really like to thank you properly for that review. Thank you so much. Shoot me a text. Let me know. Much love to you. Take care of yourself. Take this information, take this knowledge, take action on it. May your life be filled with more flow and fulfillment. Until next time, peace.